Next series of studies. So this is recording number 10 for Better Force. Very interesting study done by John Levine. Basically what he did is there were a group of people at dental school who needed their wisdom teeth removed. And so what he did is they got these students, they took out their wisdom teeth, gave them some pain medication obviously for getting out their wisdom teeth. But then they came in a little bit later to these students and they basically came in and they said, would you like something for the pain? And for a group of these people, they of course said yes. And they came in, and when they came in, they gave them some medicine, but actually there was no medicine in it. It was saline. They gave them a sugar pill, if you will. And then they came back a little bit later after giving them nothing, basically, and said, well, how is your pain now? And they basically found that the group of people who ended up getting nothing, about 50% of them said, hey, I'm feeling no pain, which led to the idea of the placebo response. These people must have been feeling the placebo response because they didn't have any product at all, and they said they felt no pain. But what was really interesting about this study is what they did in the next phase. They came back in a little bit later to these people who said, hey, I'm feeling great. And they came back in a little bit later and they said, would you like some more medication? These people said, sure, we'd like some more medication. Well, what they did on the third phase was very interesting in terms of the method. They came in and they gave these people Narcan or naloxone. And for a group of these people, do you remember we talked about naloxone previously? Naloxone blocks the endorphins. And the idea was when they gave them the naloxone, all of a sudden these people who were feeling the placebo response, all of a sudden started feeling the pain. And so what they reasoned out is these people during phase 2 who felt the placebo response were actually getting their brain's own endorphins to kick in. And thus when they got the Narcan or naloxone, it was blocking that, which suggests to a lot of us that when people really say they're feeling better and they're having the placebo effect, maybe they're getting their brain's own endorphins to kick in. Because when they got the Narcan, all of a sudden that was lost. So this idea of mind-body medicine, this Levine study, was actually very important with that. People could feel the placebo effect, and it was due to them maybe kicking in their own endorphins. Wouldn't that be great to do some research on that and get people to have that response? So that's the Levine study. Now this next one is a very interesting one. Obviously I do asthma research. Very interesting what they did in here. Most of you know what an asthma attack is, where you have a wheezing response. Well, what Lupero did in this study was very ingenious. Psychosomatic medicine took people who had asthma, if you will, and they were all being led to believe that they were going to be inhaling irritants or allergens, which usually cause bronchoconstriction. Well, it turned out that all the substances being used were saline. And it turned out that almost half of these people had a significant asthma attack at this point, which once again is evidence kind of that mind-body thing going on, even though they weren't ingesting or smelling anything. And then when they were given something else to say, hey, now we'll give you some medicine for your asthma attack, they were actually given nothing, and all of a sudden they were feeling better. So this idea of the mind-body response and collecting scientific data from this is very interesting, and I hope you would agree with that. So that's those two studies, placebos, if you will. Next we move on to social support. Study number 6 is amongst the most classic studies in all the field of health psychology. David Spiegel did a very interesting study, took women with metastatic breast cancer, and they were all getting radiation chemotherapy, and divided them into two groups. One group got the usual treatment, the other group got it as well, but the other group also was part of a supportive group therapy situation. An hour-and-a-half meeting once a week to talk about emotional and social issues, and it turned out the survival time for those in the support group, twice as long. And 3 people were alive 10 years from then, and they were all part of the support group. So this idea that psychological support groups could actually help in survival time. This came from the Spiegel study. That's why women with cancer are often encouraged to go to social support groups, because talking about things, sharing the emotional nature of things, can actually change the body's immune response, potentially even to cancer. Okay, study number 7. Study number 7 is another famous study done by Glaser, Janet Keikolt Glaser. She's a famous researcher at my alma mater, Ohio State University. Very interesting study she did. She basically looked at medical students kind of around final exam times. And what you can basically do is you can draw blood from our immune system, and then you can basically take that blood and put it into a petri dish, if you will. And in this petri dish, there is a stimulus in there. What do they call it? Do they actually say it in there? No, they don't say what the stimulus is, but you can put it in here, and if you have really good blood, your T cells and B cells, your lymphocytes, will really start proliferating in this petri dish, meaning the more immune system players you have, the stronger your immune system is. So they would actually have, they would take people's blood and put it in these petri dishes, and they would basically, to measure the immune system response, they would see how much of your lymphocytes actually proliferate against this, almost an antigen, if you will, against this stimulus. And what they basically found is they took medical students. And if you read through the abstract, you can see they looked at the T cell proliferative response. T cells are part of your immune system. And they basically found that right around the times of final examinations, the proliferative response was decreased during examinations. Basically, your immune system is down during examinations, except if you were seeking social support, you basically had a better immune system. So once again, this supports the idea that stress hurts your immune system, but if you get social support, it helps it. So that's the idea from Keikolt Glaser, as it would be, who married Ron Glaser, the first person in the abstract. Next one, number 8, as I babble along here. Kobasa, a very interesting study. Part of her dissertation looked at a very interesting response. Took 200 AT&T managers, and these were managers at AT&T right before AT&T broke up. For those of you who weren't around in the 70s, AT&T had a monopoly, and the federal government said, no, we don't want that anymore. We want phone companies to have people to have choices. So all these people, these managers, knew their good jobs and good life were going to end. And they found that about half of these managers tended to be healthy despite this. The other half tended to get kind of very sick despite knowing that there was a high amount of stress. And what Kobasa wanted to know was what discriminated these people. She found 3 key variables discriminated these two groups. For the people who were feeling good despite all the stress, they felt like they had control over their life. They had control. They knew that family, job, and relationships were important. The people who got very ill in terms of control didn't feel any sense of personal control over anything. They felt like the world was, they had no control. It was external and they couldn't control anything. So control was the first variable. And actually I didn't quite say it right. Let me re-summarize. Control was the idea of internal control versus external. So the idea of control was those people whose health was good said, you know what, I'm in control of my life. I have internal control. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to be fine. Those people who had external control tended to be very sick. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know what my future is going to hold. The world is going to determine that. So control was one factor. Second factor, commitment. Those people who were very illness prone said when they were asked, well, in terms of your life, how do you define those things that are important to your life? And they said, you know what? I'm just committed to my job. I define myself according to my job. Thus, if I'm going to lose my job, which they were going to, their health was just terrible. So they defined themselves in terms of their job. Those people who tended to be healthy tended to have a commitment to their job, but their family, their friends, and their relationships as well. They had a more holistic perspective in terms of commitment to life and the people around them. Finally, challenge. Those people who were healthy in this study, despite all the stress, basically looked at the future as a challenge. I'm going to find a better job. I'm going to do something better. I'm going to get involved with something else. Those people who are illness prone, I don't know what's going to happen to me. This is the best thing I'm going to have. I'm not looking forward to the future. Everything is going to stink. Kobasa later on ended up saying that these people have commitment, control, and challenge. We will call these people hardy. They have a hardy personality. Have you heard of the variable of hardiness? People who are hardy take problems, crises, the thing going on in New York City and New Jersey right now. If you have a hardy personality, you look at the cup as half full and you get through it. So that was research from Kobasa. Okay, we've been going on for about 10 here, so I'll stop it here.